Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome back again. Just hanging in there for about 2 minutes until we get to our official class time. Oops. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Ghazi. Welcome back. Hello, John, AJ, Veronica, Sky. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Monica. Cam, Kayla. Good to see you guys. Almost ready to head away to spring break, so it's always nice to get some time to just relax. Yes, that's right, AJ. It's due before midnight on Friday. Correct. Hey, Ryan. Rohini. Okay, yeah, no problem. Hi, Ashley, Caleb. Good to see you guys too. Fernando, good morning. Isabel, good to see you too. Okay, guys, it's pretty much now 8:30, so let's go ahead and resume. Welcome back. Good morning, everyone, and hope your week is going smooth as we head into spring break. So everyone, I think, knows the schedule and the calendar. After today's meeting, we'll be gone until we return from spring break. Just a few things to remember: that your second homework assignment, that's due tomorrow, anytime before midnight tomorrow. So I did extend the deadline a little bit from what was originally in the syllabus when it said Thursday today. So yeah, you have a little more time because it took us a little bit of additional time to just get through the second group of fallacies that are utilized on this homework assignment. So just know that. Email it to me whenever you're ready and when you're done. Anytime before midnight Friday, so the end of the day tomorrow. Okay, and other than that, when we get back from the spring break, it's perhaps not ideal, but that's just how the calendar of dates worked out with the schedule this semester. We have a quiz on Chapter 5 when we return. So that first meeting back Tuesday after we get back, it's going to be a quiz on Chapter 5. So that won't be one of our normal lecture-based meetings. It'll be one of our test days, and I will send you guys the test form just before class starts, and then you'll have until the end of 9:45 a.m. on that day to submit your answers back. In terms of the other earlier assignments and everything, those have all been graded. So whoever wants to get their scores on it, please let me know. It does take a couple days in some cases to get these replies back. So I've replied to everybody who emailed me as of Monday, and I'm going through my Tuesday responses today. So not to worry and not to fear. You're in the line if you've sent me your email, and I'll be right with you in just a moment as soon as I get the others out of the way first. So by the end of today, I should be able to get all those done. Anyways, guys, so as usual, leave a question or comment at any time so that I can keep track of who's been here. And as usual, feel free to ask anything or comment on whatever as we do these meetings. So, okay, I guess that's pretty clear enough. If not, let me know and I can help explain more. But good morning, everybody. It's good to see you guys arriving to the meeting today. Okay, so here's the plan for today's meeting, though. We just have to finish off a couple of leftover fallacies in the category fallacies of unwarranted assumption. So we got through some of it, and we just have, I think, 3 more terms within that set to complete. So we'll see how much time that takes today, and then we'll assess, when the meeting ends, okay? So let's just, first of all, what I'll do then is kind of review, with your guys' help and a little support, review some of the topics that we covered on Tuesday, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So let's just go back through the fallacies of unwarranted assumption that were discussed in the prior meeting. So I'm just going to write the names of some of them. I'm not going to write the full definition again because we did that last time and talked about them, but we will have a little brief review. So first of all, so the topic, the heading, fallacies of unwarranted assumption. Fallacies of unwarranted assumption. Okay, so the first one, begging the question. Okay, so here's my question for all of us. Who could just think, who could tell me, what do you believe is the concept of begging the question? What's the definition of this fallacy? Hi, Angel, Ryan, Gabriel, Delilah. Good to see everybody. Let's see if we can get this question on our minds. So yeah, begging the question. What kind of fallacy is this, or what is the definition of it? How does an argument beg the question? So I'll just give you a minute to collect your thoughts, consider your notes or memories, but let me know here in this chat, what is begging the question? Okay, very good. Thank you, Nicole. So you say, when one of the premises in the argument is simply a you have a misspelling error there. You say rewarded, but you know that it's the word reworded, right? Okay, because reworded, like you change the wording around, that's all. It's the same information with slightly different words. So good, no problem. But let's see, can anyone give me perhaps an example of a question-begging argument? An argument where this fallacy is in there. So let's try and get an example from you, because I mean, I've given many examples, but maybe you can think of something similar. Now, here's basically the way you would construct such an example. Include in a premise, perhaps, a more detailed description of a word that's in the conclusion. Like, so, if the conclusion is it's wrong to steal, what do you think could be a premise in that argument if it begs the question? So we're trying to justify the conclusion that it is wrong to steal. So what do you think could be the stated argument towards that conclusion if it has this fallacy? Hi, Natalie and Nicole and everyone. But yeah, let me know. Just testing your ability to consider an example and maybe with a little bit of a hint there, because I'm saying to you, think of a different way to say that same statement, that it is wrong to steal. Let's see, I'll just give you a minute, but you should put it in the chat. It is immoral to take something that is not yours. There you go, good. It's immoral to take something that is not yours, and therefore stealing is wrong, or it's bad to steal. If this is the argument, taking anything without your name written on it, I don't know, Ghazi, that might be a little bit of a weird definition, because obviously much of your property, you don't write your name on it. But maybe you have a very sort of jaundiced view about when finders keepers applies or whatever. So it's like if you leave something somewhere. But yeah, I was thinking stealing. I mean, you can obviously steal things from someone's house or whatever that they don't have marked, belongs to whoever. So anyway, yeah, it could be something like what Alyssa or Roxana has suggested for the premise. It is immoral to take something that doesn't belong to you. It is immoral to take something that is not yours. It is immoral for someone to steal, therefore stealing is wrong. Now, Nicole, your suggestion is very, very close to the original statement. It's immoral for someone to steal, therefore stealing is wrong. The only difference there is the wording immoral versus wrong, which is fine, but I would have thought it'd be cool to sort of also modify the way we describe stealing. Ghazi, I thought to be more specific than necessary. Yeah, no, it's okay. And hi there, Violetta. So a good example, if I want to make the case to somebody that climate change isn't real, and then I have a begging the question argument, I might say man-made impact on the climate just isn't happening, and therefore climate change isn't real. That would just be saying that it's not real because it's not real. So anyway, again, to kind of cap this off, you have to make sure that when you write an argument or when you speak an argument, that you're not just using the same content in the conclusion as your evidence. Evidence is something that's separate from the claim itself. Imagine someone tells you, they accuse you of a crime. They're like, you're a criminal. You did this crime. And you say, no, I'm not. What do you mean? They're like, well, here's my reasoning. You're a person who commits crimes, and this is something that you did, so therefore you're the criminal. It's not really telling you something different. It just says you did it because you did it. So anyway, evidence has to be independent from the conclusion. Okay, guys, good. So that's begging the question. Next up, just we're reviewing a little bit, and then we'll press forward with the last three when we get there. Next question, what is inappropriate appeal to authority? Yeah, so let me hear about that. Inappropriate appeal to authority. Which fallacy is this one? Someone knows, so someone will say, and then we'll go from there. Just got 4 of these to review and then 3 new ones. Okay, so Roxana, when we cite the view of an authority to support our claim, just a slight typo, no problem, to support our claim, but this person is not actually an authority on the subject. Yes. Okay, so can you think of any example where a person might commit such a fallacy as that? Talking about this person said so, and that's why I believe it, but the problem is that so-and-so is not really an authoritative figure on the topic. They don't have any expertise or specific knowledge. So let me hear from you some possible examples. You could think of a lot on my side, but maybe you have a few that you could throw out there. It's actually a big problem lately with Corona, because a lot of people deviate from professional and medical advice in favor of advice that they hear from people that don't know anything about medicine, science, or anything else. But maybe you can give me some such examples. Like the format of your example should be, this is true because, and then you fill in the blank with the view of some person that you're appealing to their opinion. But the problematic thing will be that this person's not an expert or knowledgeable about that stuff. So what do you think? Just to make sure that it came through, because if I just talk about it, who knows? It's hard for the professor to determine if the student's tracking that. I don't want it to just be something that you figure out at the last minute later when you actually get evaluated. So we got to make sure it's there in the beginning. You have plenty of time with the knowledge. So let me get an example. Okay, Roxana, COVID vaccine is not safe because a police officer told me. That'd be a good one, Roxana, sure. You can imagine something like that happening, someone that's an officer and they say, look, in my experience out there in the field, we don't see a lot of COVID cases, and I think that there's just a lot of hype and it's a bunch of nonsense. Well, that person's not a professional with medicine, that's not a doctor, that's not an infectious disease specialist. So if you wanted to know about police tactics and the best way to, I don't know, conduct an arrest or perform a police maneuver, then the cop is the person that you probably would want to speak to, but not on the science of vaccines. Okay, so that's a good one. Anybody else though? Roxana, really? We're just gonna leave it all to one person? When I'm speaking these things, you gotta take it personally, like I'm talking to you. So let's get another one. I'm not moving on yet. That's a very good example. Okay, so what do we have next? Nicole, it is safe to inject hydroxychloroquine in our veins because Donald Trump said so. Okay, well that's a relevant example, I guess. Yeah, you guys know that there were some very unfortunate statements made by the former president last year during the height of the pandemic, when we were having these coronavirus task force briefings, and he would kind of insert himself into the press briefing to kind of hold center stage and take up the attention of the media. And yeah, he made some statements famously about, maybe we can inject something or whatever, like disinfectants. It wasn't even hydroxychloroquine. He was talking about household cleaning solvents and stuff. Yeah, so anyway, unfortunate, because a person with such authority and power does command respect, and oftentimes people just defer to the statements of such leaders because we assume that they're going to lead and that they're going to be informed. But anyway, good example. Not to say that there have not been misstatements or poor public messaging by members of other parties, but that's your example, and it's a relatable, relevant one. Okay, so let's continue. We've got 2 of those. So inappropriate appeal to authority, guys. Make sure that you don't just cite people that are outside of their field when you're trying to make an argument. Otherwise, you're committing a fallacy. Okay, so then we go on to next, loaded question. So let's know, what is loaded question? That's another one. Another one to add to the list. So let's kind of go back into this. Yeah, what is Donald Trump an expert on? I guess you could have said real estate, properties, building hotels. Yeah, okay, so Tiandra, when you ask a question that assumes an answer to a different unasked question, correct, yes. Good. So also correct, Nicole, Roxana, thank you for that. Used in the court of law sometimes, that's right, Roxana, but I didn't want to make you think that that's the only possible context. That it can happen in personal situations, even in relationships. Someone asks you what's wrong and maybe there's nothing wrong. Somebody asks you where you work, assuming that you have a job, but you don't have one, so that's a loaded question, or who are you dating or something and you're not with anybody. Let's see if any one of you guys can come up with another possibility of a loaded question, maybe one that you've actually heard or one that you can imagine happening in real life. Good to back the definition with a few examples. I've tossed a couple out there randomly just now. So if you can follow that format, let's see if you can throw something back. What is an example of loaded question? How many loaded questions do you know? That's a loaded question, isn't it? If a person doesn't know the definition of the concept. But anyway, I digress. What's an example? When's the last time you were hungover? What's your favorite illegal drug? I'm just playing around, but you know, these are examples. Let's continue though. Give me one from your side. What is the last time you went to the snow? Okay, that's good, Gabriel, because maybe a person's never visited the snow or they live in like a more desert area and they just don't travel a lot. If you asked me that question, it'd be a very long time, but I've been in the snow before. Nonetheless, yeah, if you don't know that about the individual, this could be a good example, sure. Let's move on. Well, I don't want to move on yet. I want another maybe example or one or two. Thank you so much, that was good. These are just questions. All you gotta do is type in some kind of question which assumes something. You've never been, Gabriel? Oh yeah, you gotta go out there sometime. I mean, but at the same time, it is a bit of a trek. You gotta have a group. It's not something you can really do alone. But okay, if I asked you that question, it would be a loaded question then. Who else can throw something out there? It's not too hard. Gabriel had a great example. When was the last time you broke your hand? Okay, there you go. That's very specific, just about the hand. I could even ask like, how many bones have you broken? Or which bones have you broken? That would be a loaded question if a person's never broken a bone. I think I've never broken a bone. I've never had to, I've never had it diagnosed as such, like get an MRI scan, but I've had some running injuries that were pretty painful for a long time where I almost couldn't walk. So maybe I did have a hairline fracture and didn't know it. But anyway, I've never, officially discovered that I had a broken bone. When are you going to get married? Oh, there you go, yeah. Maybe the person doesn't have any intention to get married, or how many children do you have, etc. Okay, good. Thank you, guys. So those are all good, helpful suggestions for examples. So that was the loaded question. Now, one more that we talked about last time was false dilemma. Okay, so let's hear about the false dilemma. What are you allergic to? There you go. Yeah, what allergies do you have? Maybe you don't have any. That would be, I think, in my case, no allergies, hope. One time as a kid, I had hives for some reason. I never found out what it was. So it kind of just came and went, but maybe it was just like something random. But yeah, go ahead. Let me know then. False dilemma. What do you think? What's the definition, first of all? False dilemma. Okay, good. Thanks again, Nicole. So when one reduces the responses to a complex issue to a binary either-or choice. Correct. So it's like oversimplifying a complicated thing as though there's only two options or positions a person could take, but really in reality there's more than two. Like, I don't know, if I said to you, is your favorite color red or blue? You know, you might say, well, that's a bit of a false choice because there's so many other colors in the rainbow or along the spectrum, so limiting me to two possibilities is a bit of a false dilemma. What if somebody says, look, you either love America or you just hate it, and I haven't seen you, waving a flag around, so you hate this country? Is that really, I mean, how could you hate America? You live here. Well, that's, again, a false dilemma. It's not like there's only two possibilities. You're just like a flag-waving patriot, or you're just like a total, expatriate that wants to not be a part of the country. So anyways, a couple cases there, and hopefully you kind of get the feeling like there's more than two choices. Maybe someone asks you, do you play the Switch or the PS5? And you're like, no, actually I do Xbox. So let me hear if there's another option of a false dilemma example that someone here could come up with. Let's see. Let me know. Just, like the point here is, think of someone framing something as though there's only two possible positions. Pepperoni pizza or ham pizza. There you go, Violetta. We all know there's many, many other toppings and selections when it comes to pizza. What's your favorite band, Blink-182 or Green Day? Okay, there you go. If I had to pick between those two, I would say Blink, even though Green Day had some classic records back in the day that kind of, in my opinion, didn't sustain it. Are you an atheist or a Christian? Okay, there you go, because a person could have a different religious identification that's not one of those. That's also great. Yeah, thank you. These all sound good. Anything else, just while we're on the topic? If not, that'll be fine. But it seems like you guys get it. So try not to allow people to rope you into all or nothing, or just binary assessment of choices when there's many more. Favorite team, Dodgers or Yankees? Sure, yeah. And then, like, in LA, a lot of times people ask that, like, do you like the Dodgers or the Angels or something? Assuming that because you're from Southern California that you've got to support one of those two teams. Okay, yeah, false dilemma. I'm going to open the book to the relevant pages just so that I have it open. Yeah, false dilemma. It's Valentine's Day, and this guy didn't propose to me. So I don't know what I'll do. If he doesn't marry me, I'll never find love. So that could be like all or nothing thinking, false dilemma. The person is like, if I can't have this one person, then I'll never be happy in life, as if there's only two choices, either being with them or being totally miserable. Obviously, that's a false choice. Yelka, good morning. I apologize for being late. Oh, yeah, thanks. Not to worry, but it's okay. You'll catch up and can watch it later if you need to. So, all right, guys, I guess that concludes our review of the last topics from the previous meeting on Tuesday. Now we're going to continue and finish off the rest of the fallacies of unwarranted assumptions. So there are three more, and here are the names. First of all, there's questionable cause. And then aside from that, there's slippery slope. And then finally, the last one is the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so we simply have to learn these three, and then we'll be all the way done with all the fallacies that we needed to study in this class from Chapter 5. Okay, so I'm going to go in the order that you see listed. We'll start off then with the questionable cause. Okay, so questionable cause fallacy. In a way, it's pretty simple to understand. It's just when a person assumes without good evidence or reason that one thing is the cause of another thing. Okay, so when we assume without good evidence that one thing is the cause of another. Okay. Assume without good evidence that one thing is the cause of another thing. That's questionable cause fallacy. So definitely there is cause and effect in the world. Things happen, and then that is the reason that other things happen. You know, like you could say, let me think. If you knocked a bottle off of a surface and then it fell to the ground and shattered, then you could say, well, the cause of this glass being everywhere is because of the movement of your hand in that part of space. So like that's the cause, this is the effect. You know, like a person pulls a trigger on a gun and that causes the bullet to fire, and then all the ensuing destruction or damage that follows from that is caused by the initial action of the person pulling the trigger. So there's cause and effect, of course. But the problematic thing is when people start to assume cause and effect relations exist where there's no evidence that the thing is the cause. And sometimes people also refer to this by another name. So the Latin name that is sometimes given for questionable cause is post hoc fallacy. So I'm just writing the other name down here so you know it. Post hoc. So post hoc is the other name. Why is it also called post hoc? Because post hoc means in Latin after this. So it sort of indicates that a person sometimes thinks that if one thing happens just before another thing in time, that that's enough of a reason to think that it's the cause of the other thing. But obviously that's not enough of a reason. Look, like for example, I was born in the 80s, and then, I don't know, 9/11 happened 20 or so years later. But I'm not the cause of that event just because I was born earlier and then that happened later. There's no connection between the two things. So sometimes different things happen, but they're not at all related. And it would be a questionable cause fallacy to try and assert a linkage between them. So like think of superstition as one good example here. So say someone's walking down the street, right, just taking a walk, and in front of them, a black cat crosses in front, right? So like just runs in front of them as they're passing by. Okay, now suppose that later on in that same day, they have their car parked in the parking space, and just randomly, bad luck, a tree branch falls from overhead, which then lands on the car and causes some dents and damage to the hood. Okay, now, let's say, what do you think could be a questionable cause fallacy that this person might then engage in after this sequence of events? They might say that something caused something, namely what? What do you think? If you follow the example, right? So like just in brief, person walking, sees a cat cross, later on get car damage because of a tree branch somehow falling on top of their parking space. So yeah, Ghazi, the black cat caused the tree branch to fall. You know, if you guys know anything about, you know, old superstitious myths and so on, like they say that a black cat crossing your path is bad luck. So this person may then think, okay, the two things are connected. I'm putting them together. Black cat crossed, then later this event happened. But obviously that's not the cause. That's not the reason that it happened. Otherwise, we could reliably induce bad luck on people by just unleashing, you know, hordes of cats wherever we wanted. By the way, black cats are cute, cuddly animals. I have some friends with black cats, and statistically, they say that pets that just have a pure black coat are sometimes chosen less often by those that would adopt pets and rescue them. So I think that they kind of receive a negative reputation for no valid reason. But anyway, it's certainly a questionable cause fallacy there. Or if someone smashes a mirror and then they think that something bad happened because of that. Or maybe a person steps on a big, you know, visible crack on the ground, and then a few minutes later they hear from their mother by text saying, you know what, I'm at the hospital. I actually slipped and fell and I injured my back. They need to do some MRIs to see if I have a small fracture in the spine. You've heard the old nursery rhyme, step on a crack, break your mother's back. If you thought right then and there, well, damn, I guess I caused it because I stepped on that crack, that would be, again, a questionable cause fallacy. If that was really a cause-effect relationship, then everyone's mother would eventually have their back broken by some event of stepping on a crack one way or the other. So anyway, correlation without causation, another possibility of an example. So like take this. Women have reached more full equality in terms of like employment and social standing over the last, couple generations. So the women's movement has delivered gains in equality for women in terms of employment, income level, educational attainment, and all the rest. At the same time period over the last like 40 years, the divorce rates have increased. Suppose someone thinks that it's, women that are now working more, that's the cause of these increased divorce rates. Well, there's a correlation, but it could be that it's just a confounding variable. Other things have changed in society over the same time period. So it's not necessarily to be attributed to the gaining status of women. Or I could give another example. Sometimes when these mass shootings happen, unfortunately, like we saw this week, you'll look into the facts and history of the shooter. And in some cases anyway, we've seen shooters that were avid gamers of like first-person shooter games, and then you've heard it argued, at least I've heard it argued in the past with some of the other cases, that they thought maybe the heavy video game shooter games could somehow be a cause that leads to that effect of people, taking a gun and using it as a weapon for shooting. But anyway, like if you really think about it, a lot of the people that play these games, if they're playing them all the time, sometimes that indicates that their parents are not so present in their lives. And so that could be a false variable that indicates that there's actually a different cause. Also, I mean, if it was really just about video games, video game playing, if you just look around the world, there's a lot of avid gamers in other parts of the world where these shootings are not as prevalent. So you would expect that if that was really the cause, that we would see people in, Japan and other countries where there's a lot of gaming having similar number of such events. Okay, guys, well, questionable cause all around. This is me trying to give you a good sense of the concept and some examples. Have you ever heard of people that are superstitious when it comes to their sporting team that they support? And so they think, like, I got to wear this lucky jersey because if I don't, my team won't win, and then like they don't wear it or something, or they miss the game and then their team lost and they're like, man, I knew it. I jinxed them because, it's like I got to be sitting there in front of the TV with my specific jersey on for them to have the vibe that they're going to win. But obviously the performance of the athletes on the field cannot have anything to do with just one randomly chosen person's outfit. It has everything to do with the conditions of play and the opponent's performance, etc. So those are other examples. And then just one more that's also from the book. Well, sorry, I'm going to give you two more, okay, while we're on this point. So you've probably heard of the old classic Hall of Fame baseball player, Babe Ruth. Famously, I think he pointed one time and then he hit a home run after he pointed. So it was like, he kind of called his own shot. Very hard to do. I think in basketball, it'd be a lot easier if you just call bank or you call three and then you make it. But hitting a home run is statistically harder to do. Anyway, though, Babe Ruth, in 1920, he was traded from the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees. And he hated the trade. And so what he said was, I'm going to put a curse on the Boston Red Sox right now. So I'm cursing these guys. They're cursed. And actually after that, for 84 years, they didn't win the World Series until 2004, a stunning comeback win in the World Series where they were all the way down. But anyway, for that whole 84-year time period, they weren't winning. And so some people thought, it's the curse of Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth has somehow cursed generations and generations of Boston Red Sox players and teams. Obviously, though, again, whether the team plays well or not can't possibly have anything to do with an arbitrarily made statement from 80 years ago. If that was true, then I guess any of us could curse a team just at any time and, critically destroy their prospects for success. A little more recently, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the rapper Lil B. He used to play, he was putting curses and stuff on NBA players. I think he cursed Kevin Durant for a long time because Kevin Durant came out and said Lil B's music is trash and can't believe people like him. And then for like a while, it looked like he was actually struggling, but then he went to Golden State and they won some titles. So anyways, guys, questionable cause fallacy. And then the last one I'll throw out is this. You've heard of Jennifer Lopez, the famous singer, actress, entertainer. Okay, well, her mother's Guadalupe Lopez, and I didn't know this before I taught this class and saw it in the book, but I guess the thing is, her mother actually won $2 million one time gambling at a casino in a slot machine in Atlantic City. And I guess just before she pulled the lever of the slot machine, she said like a little good luck charm, you know, like a little recitation of good luck, and then she won. So in her mind, she's like, that's the reason. I know that I caused the win through this little phrase or saying. But obviously, again, the reason that she won cannot possibly have anything to do with those statements that she made before. Otherwise, if we could somehow rig the casinos so that when we just chant something first, we win, then all those methods would become discovered. The casinos would start to lose profitability. The house would always lose, and then there would no longer be any functioning casinos. So, I mean, anyway, questionable cause, guys. When there's something that you think is the cause of something else, you need high quality and clear evidence to establish that. Don't just assume that one thing is the cause of another just because it happened before the other thing, okay? So I guess that's all I can say about that. Let's see if there's more comment from the book. Yeah, to avoid this fallacy, we should be careful not to assume that there is a causal relationship just because two events occurred near each other in time. We should also refer to well-designed studies to determine whether a causal relationship has been established between the two events. Okay. Yeah, one study found that almost 70% of college students engage in superstitious behavior, such as the use of a charm or ritual before an exam or an athletic game when they're insufficiently prepared or when the outcome is very important. Okay, so questionable cause. That's good. Now we have just two more terms, and then we'll be all finished with the notes on fallacies. So what's next is called slippery slope. Okay, so slippery slope. With slippery slope, the idea of the fallacy is that it's based on the false idea that if one type of action is either taken or permitted, that eventually all actions of that type will be taken or permitted. Okay, so the erroneous, meaning like in error, false, unjustified. The erroneous assumption that if one type of action is taken or permitted, sorry, thank you. The erroneous assumption that if one type of action is taken or permitted, then eventually all actions of this type will be taken or permitted. Okay, so there you see it. The erroneous assumption that if one type of action is taken or permitted, then eventually all actions of this type will be taken or permitted. So let me give you a little of the backstory about the name of the fallacy, slippery slope, because some of these fallacies, they are supposed to trigger visuals that give you an insight into what they mean. Like the straw man fallacy is supposed to call to mind the thought of like a scarecrow, a man that's not really made out of flesh and blood, but just straw. So that's like the idea that you're responding to a fake version that misrepresents the person's real argument. With red herring, you know, that refers back to the herrings that were used to help train hunting dogs so that they would become distracted from the original target. That's a metaphor for trying to drop a distracting separate subject in the course of a dialogue or debate. Okay, well, there's also kind of like a little visual metaphor that you can use to help remember slippery slope. Just as the name indicates, think of a person standing atop a high hill. Okay, so they're up on top of the hill, and there are slopes, of course, that run down from the top of the hill towards the ground. Suppose that we're telling this person that's standing up there on the top, don't even take one step, buddy. Don't even take one step, because it may seem like right now it's just a small step, okay? But if you do take that one step, it's not going to stop with one, because the slope is slippery and it's very steep. So if you take even one step down, it's going to lead to a series of stumbles and falls, and you're going to end up slip sliding and falling all the way down the slope and taking on worse and worse injuries as you continue to go down. Okay, so basically it's forewarning you. Don't even take the one initial step, because the one initial step is going to lead to a series of further and further stumbles and falls that incur worse and worse injuries. So don't even take the one step. Now, that's a metaphor. It's like in life, sometimes we tell a person, don't do that one thing or don't allow that one thing. Because if you do, it's going to result in a series of worse and worse consequences, all based on that initial action or decision. Okay, so like say you've ever heard maybe the gateway drug argument, that sometimes is claimed as a slippery slope fallacy. Like a person might argue, you know, when you get to a certain age, people start wanting to experiment with like drugs and alcohol a little bit, dabble in it, just see how it feels. But I would tell you this, don't even try one sip of that alcohol, because if you try even one little sip, it's not going to stop there. Next time it's going to be more than that, and then it's going to be more, and then pretty soon you're going to be a total addict. And after a while, you'll never be able to hold down a job or finish school or have a relationship. You probably end up, you know, on government aid, maybe in jail. Do you really want to ruin your whole life? So don't even take that one sip. But obviously this prediction of a totally catastrophic sequence of events predicated on the one small, you know, testing of alcohol or whatever the case may be is perhaps a poor argument and a slippery slope. You need better evidence that this series of events is likely to happen on the basis of the one initial choice. Or the book mentions this example. Suppose that you have a parent of a child and the child is begging for like a candy bar at the grocery store from the parent, and the parent is just, you know, not wanting to indulge them. But the kid keeps saying, please, 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 I really want it. It looks delicious. Now, suppose they talk to another parent that's with them and they say, you know what, don't give in. This kid wants you to give them the candy bar, but you got to stay strong and say no. You got to be firm, because if you give in to what they're begging for, in this case, it's going to set them up over time to become more spoiled. And then as an adult, you know, they'll never be able to take no as an answer from anybody, and they might end up doing bad and, you know, harmful things. So don't give them the candy bar. But is it really a fair point to say that the whole future personality and character of the individual is going to be shaped by this one small action or choice? Again, perhaps a slippery slope fallacy. Now, in terms of like the bigger picture of society and policy, sometimes we hear slippery slope arguments as well. When there were debates about whether or not the Supreme Court should federally legalize same-sex marriage as they did in 2015, some people were saying, well, look, if we open the door to different forms of marriage than the traditional heterosexual man and woman partner, then it's not going to stop there. You know, after a while, people are going to want to marry anything, marry their fridge, marry their, you know, microwave, marry their pets or something. So we don't want that. We can't live in a world where marriage has just become this total deviation from the norm. And we don't want to have people marrying, you know, household objects and stuff like that. So don't allow the gay marriage. But again, as you can see, there's been no kind of radical transformation of society based on these decisions. And some people said the same thing with gays in the military. You know, like if gays are allowed to openly serve, then that's going to affect the unit readiness and the cohesion of these fighting forces. And eventually we'll just be overrun, dominated by other enemies, and we won't even have a country. But again, as you can tell, this is just an overhyped prediction of catastrophic results. And when we change these policies, nothing bad happened at all. In fact, it's enhanced the effectiveness of the military by allowing people to be recruited more easily. So I don't know. Here's another example from the book. This I actually heard in the course of the debates over the coronavirus relief packages that were passed last year and this year. So as you may know, part of those packages was to enhance unemployment benefits to help support people that were losing their jobs or were temporarily out of work because of all the closures happening with the pandemic. And some people were saying, look, we can't give people this extra unemployment, because if you do that, it's going to put us on a slippery slope to everyone just saying, look, I don't want to work, I just want to collect unemployment checks, and then we won't have a workforce, and then our economy will just tank. And so we'll actually bring about the collapse of society if we give expanded unemployment to people. But again, there's no real clear evidence that that's the result of such policies, especially when they're necessary and vital during a time of economic downturn and a pandemic. And that's in the book, a similar example. Government bailouts will encourage businesses to be irresponsible and take absurd risks. If we allow them, we will end up having to bail out every business in the nation until we end up living in communism. But again, there's no necessary implication that that step is going to lead to that. Okay, so I'm going to see if you can come up with one. What do you think? Why might a person say, hey, let's stop developing artificial intelligence? What could be the problem with developing artificial intelligence? You know, computers that can take over more of the functions that human beings used to only be able to do. Like you have Siri, you have Google Voice Assistant, and then you also have like, you know, gaming and stuff where the simulated opponent is smart. Okay, there you go, Ghazi, right. Yeah, someone might say, it seems innocent and nice to just have smart computers today, but why are we going down this road? We should stop right now, because the further and further we go, the closer we're getting towards a future time where these robots can think, and then they're going to decide that we are irrelevant and in a way unnecessary, and then they'll try to take over the world like you've seen in Terminator, where the cyborgs and everything try to rise up against the humans and eliminate them. So don't build these computers with artificial intelligence. Again, a slippery slope fallacy. So with slippery slope, just make sure that you need clear evidence before you make predictions of what's likely to happen in the future. Don't kind of give towards the thought that there's always this impending doom or catastrophe lurking behind one initial decision or action. As a little kid, I remember there was this children's story. I don't know if it's still out there, but when I was a kid, I remember reading one time the "If you give a mouse a cookie" story. And in a way, I feel like the moral of the story is to argue for the slippery slope fallacy or something. So in a way, I don't know if I agree with the message, but the story was something like there's a little mouse in your house and he wants a cookie. And so you want to give him the cookie because that would make him happy. But don't give him the cookie, because if you give him the cookie, then he's going to want 2 cookies, and then he's going to want 3, then he's going to want a whole box. Then he's going to want to have a place in the house to eat them for himself where he's not going to be bothered. Then he's going to want a little more room, a little more space. Pretty soon the mouse just takes over the house and you've got to live in the garage. And it all started with the one choice to just give him a little cookie. So what is this telling children? Generosity, if you display it, is bound to blow up in your face down the line when people like take advantage of it. I mean, I don't know if that's a good message or what, but you can sort of see it along the same lines, perhaps, of the slippery slope. And so, yeah, from the book, The Assumption: to avoid the slippery slope fallacy, we should carefully carry out our research, familiarize ourselves with the likely outcomes of different actions and policies, and watch out for a tendency to exaggerate the forecast of an impending catastrophe. Sometimes in marketing and advertising, you see slippery slope fallacy committed. I think there was an advertisement a few years ago for some kind of insurance product, and it was like they're almost stating a bad chain argument. Like, if you don't have our insurance, then you won't be able to call anyone when your car gets a flat tire. And if you can't call anyone, then you're going to have to wait overnight. If you wait overnight, then you're going to get robbed. And if you get robbed, then you're going to blah, blah, blah. And they keep going through this sequence of events. So in the end, they're like, don't end up, in a ditch with no support. Get our insurance product. But again, that's like a slippery slope fallacy. There are many alternatives probably to their insurance product. And also, there's no necessary connection between the given sequence of events and not having their own, product. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, was it Allstate? Was it one of those insurers? But, there's commercials for this stuff. So sometimes maybe you could think a slippery slope could go in the opposite direction. Like, okay, well, if I get up early this morning, then I'll have energy. And if I have energy, then I'll do well in my classes. If I do well in my classes, and it all leads towards like ultimate success and happiness. That could be irrational too. But usually the slippery slope as a fallacy is associated with a negative prediction of a sequence of events that follows afterwards. But anyway, guys, there you go. So slippery slope. And we then just have the last one. Okay, so the last of the 20 fallacies that we've learned all together is this one, and it's called the naturalistic fallacy. Okay, so the naturalistic fallacy is this. It's based on the unjustified assumption that whatever is natural must be good and right, and whatever is unnatural in some sense to be described is bad and wrong. Okay, so unjustified assumption that whatever is natural, whatever that means, is good, and side by side with that, whatever is unnatural, whatever that means, is bad. Okay. So this is a fallacy that we see happening all the time in everyday life, in marketing, in media, and in just the personal habits and beliefs that people have. So it's important to understand, though, that this is a false assumption. It's not true that just because something is somehow natural or given by nature that it's a good thing. How many natural things are not very good for us at all? Earthquakes, hurricanes, viruses. You know, these viruses, they just come from the world of nature, but they're not to our benefit. Diseases, you know, polio. I mean, these things come from nature. In fact, what's not natural are the vaccines that we use to try and fight them off. But the vaccines are good for you, right? So if you have a problem with things that are not natural, then turn off this computer right now. What are you doing? This computer, of course, doesn't grow on a tree. It's not found in the world of nature. It's a man-made item of human technology and industry. But does that mean it's a bad thing? No. Telecommunications, computing, etc., they make our lives better. They enable us to connect with each other and transmit information. So that's not a bad thing. There are many natural things that aren't good for us. I mean, imagine a person says to you, look, they say don't do cocaine, but come on, really? It just comes from the plant. It's just the coca plant. God put it here, you know, so it's for us to take and just enjoy. It can't be bad if it comes from nature. But obviously, if you know this is a dangerous substance, it's highly addictive, and it has harmful impacts on your body and your wellness. So just making the case that it's a good thing because it's natural, this is not a good argument. Some things that are natural are good, sure. Some things that are unnatural are bad, and that's also true. But you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. You can't just have a sweeping general assumption that all those natural things are good and all those unnatural things are bad. Sometimes you hear people make this kind of argument when they talk about like same-sex orientation and stuff. Like people will say, well, I mean, in nature, the sexual organs are there for the purposes of reproduction. So if people are engaged in, you know, sexual relationships and stuff, and they're not using these organs for the purposes of reproduction, then I guess that's somehow unnatural and must be bad. But we're human beings and we have freedom and we have will. So, I mean, in a way, it's a false assumption. It's not necessarily true at all that people are more or less happy based on their orientation one way or the other. And, you know, we have to give people the liberty and freedom that they have as human beings to make their own choices about what they want to do and how they want to be in life. So just because something's not, let's say, in the natural order of things, according to someone's description of it, that doesn't mean that it's a bad or a wrong thing. Do you really want to roll around in poison ivy or something because it just grows from the ground? Not necessarily. Do you want to give away your car, your watch, your cell phone, your computer, your microwave, refrigerator, plumbing? None of these things would have happened in the state of nature if not for man intervening into nature to make it more hospitable to our lives. And the state of nature doesn't really care about you. In nature, you're going to be cut down and die soon and short in a short life. You know, if you look at the human lifespan, it's significantly increased as we've made strides scientifically, medically, and et cetera, as human civilization has advanced. So you don't want to necessarily go back to the state of nature and be a Cro-Magnon man or woman, you know, hunting and gathering, because this is not the most easy lifestyle or the best for human beings. I also find it a little bit interesting philosophically to make deeper questions about what the word natural even refers to. I mean, this distinction between natural and unnatural is a bit fuzzy to me, because if you look at other animals, like, say, honeybees, right? They build things together, but we don't say that the honeycomb or the beehive is not natural because we just think that's bees doing their natural thing. You know, beavers sometimes will construct dams together by collecting wood, and they'll do this over long spans of time. But we don't look at the beaver's dam as unnatural because we just think that's part of the form of life of beavers. Well, with human beings, I mean, we're another animal on this planet, and we build things too, except we build very complicated things. We build computers, televisions, roads, criminal justice systems, and all kinds of technology. And people say that's not natural because I guess it takes extraordinary control over the natural environment to derive the needed materials, etc., and processes for generating those things. But I'm, in a way, a little bit willing to question whether those things are truly unnatural, because if they're just a product of human ingenuity and innovation, then why isn't it just the corollary of the honeybee's honeycomb or beehive when looking at a human being? But I digress. If we want to call those things not natural because they're technologically created, then fine, but they're still not bad things. Medicine, anesthesia, surgical procedures, the development of vaccines, and all these other things are enhancements to the quality of human life. So that's what I'll say, and that's what the book mentions. The naturalistic fallacy is based on the unjustified assumption that what is natural is good and what is unnatural is bad. We find the fallacy in arguments that claim that no good could come from anything artificial like AI, simply on the grounds that it's not created by nature. Advertisers sometimes use this type of fallacy. Okay, so that's an important point to mention too. We live in a world where advertisers know that people seem to have like a cultural preference for things that are labeled natural. So oftentimes they'll use that as part of their marketing drive to get you to buy something. So, let's say vendor of a consumable product will make sure to label it if they can. Natural ingredients, organic, not GMO. Thinking that, the consumer will want it more because it's described in a way as not being, messed with by man, but it's just coming from nature. But in some cases, the products that are being advertised are still not good for you. Like, have you seen tobacco companies that will sometimes put out a product that says natural tobacco, like organically grown tobacco leaf? That doesn't change the properties of the tobacco in terms of its carcinogenic properties or its addictive potential. But it might make someone feel better about buying it just because they're going on to this fallacious way of thinking in the naturalistic fallacy. So yeah, advertisers try to get us to conclude that their product is good and healthy simply because it's natural. An ad can claim, for example, that a tobacco product is 100% natural tobacco. However, it doesn't follow that tobacco is good for us. All tobacco is natural, but that doesn't make it healthy. Arsenic, HIV, tsunamis are also natural, but that doesn't mean that we want them or that we think they're good for us. A person may argue that hunting is acceptable because other animals hunt and kill. So someone might say, when we hunt, we're only doing what animals in nature do, so it must be good. But as the book says, however, the fact that other animals are predators does not justify our doing the same. Some animals eat their young. A few female insects even eat their male partners after mating. But these naturally occurring examples do not imply that it's morally justifiable for a human being to do the same. So what may be natural in the case of animals doesn't necessarily track over to an argument that if we do the same things in our case, they're morally or even legally justifiable. So we have to evaluate things a little more carefully than that. We can't just make this simple set assumption that whatever's natural is good. In many cases they are, but not universally so. And we can't, in the other hand, say that whatever's unnatural is bad. It just depends. So in the end, we've learned about all these different fallacies, and I guess in general, to avoid fallacies, either being tricked by them or committing them yourselves, just try to do these few things. Know yourself. Know which fallacies you're most likely to fall for and which you're more likely to commit, so that you can kind of build in defense mechanisms against falling for those fallacies or committing them. Build up your confidence and self-esteem. A lot of times people commit fallacies because they lack the self-confidence to be challenged with their arguments, and so they have to resort to fallacious reasoning because they don't want to concede the point. But people that are self-confident will be able to see whether their own reasoning is flawed, and they won't be upset or taking it personal when they need to be critiqued. Cultivate good listening skills. Be a respectful listener of other people, even when you don't agree with them, especially when you don't agree with them. Don't be thinking of how you're going to respond before you've even heard the other person's full argument. Sometimes we're so set in our desire to challenge and defeat someone's position that we're not fully listening to them and hearing them out. So make sure that you do listen carefully. If you notice that they commit a fallacy, respectfully point it out, but look for common ground. Try to speak clearly and write clearly. Avoid ambiguous and vague terms or faulty grammar. Don't confuse the quality of the person's argument with the character of the person making the argument. So let's try not to descend into personal attacks when we're dealing with people that we don't agree with. Sometimes people hold views that you don't like, and sometimes they present arguments that you deeply disagree with. But when you disagree with an argument, that does not necessarily mean that the person who gives it is a bad person that's worthy of disrespect. So yeah, and it mentions this. Focus on the argument that's being presented, not on the person presenting it. So you can attack the argument, that's great, but not the person. And resist the temptation to counterattack if they attack your character as well, because that makes you no better than them, and it defeats the credibility of your own reasoning. When two people trade insult for insult instead of focusing on the real issue, an argument may escalate out of control, and both people may end up feeling frustrated and hurt. The belief that if the other person is using fallacies, then it's okay for you to do the same is immature. Know your topic. Don't jump to a conclusion without first doing your research. Knowing about your subject matter will make it less likely that you'll commit a fallacy, because you'll be able to defend your position with reasons. And then finally, don't be so obsessed with winning. Like, don't be so focused on winning that you can't just let the argument and the conversation develop in a rational and sensible way. Sometimes we're so obsessed with the idea that we're right and the other person is wrong that we end up committing these fallacies just in the pursuit of victory. So look at it rather as a cooperative pursuit of the truth, not me against you and I'm going to beat you with my argument. Okay, well, that's everything on these fallacies, guys. And we have a little bit of extra time to finish the class, but I was thinking if we finished early today, with the spring break coming up, maybe we could just, for one time, close a little early and give you guys some extra time back. So I don't know. If that sounds okay to you, then let me know. If you want to continue to review some of these fallacies, you can simply just look at any of the videos that have been posted of the initial discussions as we've gone through them over the last 2 weeks. So we've talked about all 20. You have all the information you need to do well on the homework that's due tomorrow night before midnight, and also for the upcoming quiz that will happen when we return the Tuesday after the spring break. So are we all on the same page, guys? Thanks, Grace. I appreciate that. Let me know. I don't want to close, especially because it's a few minutes earlier, until I get that recognition from you guys. Okay, well, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Violetta. I mean, we all, I guess, like to have a little bit of time back. But I do enjoy being with you guys. It's not that I'm trying to rush away from this because I just don't like teaching or being with my students. The quiz will be on all 20 fallacies. Yes, Yelka. So make sure that you can prepare by knowing the definitions of the fallacies and being able to recognize examples of them. Okay. Cool. Well, have a great spring break, everyone. I'll be in touch if you need anything, if you're looking for any scores, or if you have any questions, just simply email me. And if it doesn't happen immediately, just don't worry. I will always get back to you no later than 2 days after the message was sent. So like if you sent me something on a Tuesday, for example, then by the end of the day, Thursday, I'll hear your response. Okay. Well, have a good one then. And until next time, I guess I'll see you guys in a few weeks. Okay. Bye-bye.